Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Okeefeenokee Swamp Park. And my name is Roy. I'll be your boat guide today. That was as fast as the boat goes. Now, when the weather warms up, the alligators start, chasing the boat down the trail. If in the event that we have to lighten the load to, sacrifice some that others may live, all you have to do is remember one thing. Swim faster than the slowest person. No, I'm just kidding, y'all folks. Welcome to the Okeefeenokee Swamp Park. We've never had any accidents out here, but we do have black bears out here along with the alligators. Black bears, wild boars, and Florida panther are out here in the National Wildlife Preserve. White-tailed deer, bobcat, foxes, raccoons, skunks, opossums, and rabbits. Armadillo came up from Florida. He's not native to the swamp. And the coyote now has dropped down. He's a member of the Okeefeenokee environment. Now, y'all are in the largest dark water swamp in the United States. This place is close to 500,000 acres, 700 square miles in size. It is larger than our state of Rhode Island. National Wildlife Preserve is about 440,000 acres. They changed the name in 1975 from a National Wildlife Reserve to a National Wildlife Preserve. I'll tell y'all more about that later, but they've added to the park over the years. It started out about 220,000 acres. It's grown tremendously, with government condemning land and buying extra land around the edge of the swamp. Now this loblolly bay tree here that's dead just above us sacrificed itself, folks. There's a fungus coming in the Port of Savannah that's actually attacking the loblolly bay trees. You might see a few smaller ones dead along and along. But the majority of the trees we have in the swamp are cypress trees, pond cypress variety. Now, you may see these oranges, knees or knots. We're passing by here in the edge of the water to the right and to the left. These are from the roots of the cypress, pond cypress tree. These knees or knots be all shapes, sizes, kinds, and varieties. Some very tall, some growing. The ones that's oranges on top, they kind of still growing. They come up from the roots of these cypress trees and do not produce and make a new tree. But scientists say it has to do with the tree's ability to breathe air, a storage container for the starches, and it helps anchor these trees down. We're coming through the loblolly bays, but we got some slick white bays here, the slick bark of the white bay tree and the crinkle bark of what we call the black gum tree. It's a deciduous tree just like the cypress trees are. It drops their leaves. These canals were made off of Cowhouse Island, were once time Native American trails. Cowhouse Island was one of the 70 named islands in the swamp. 24 of these large islands have had Native American habitation on them, including Cowhouse Island, that y'all came in on. It's been a jumping off point in the northern side of the Okeefeenokee Swamp for thousands of years. They say people have inhabited the swamp since 2500 BC. Now, this trail to the left was opened up in 1946. The boats were small, hold 8 people maximum, with a 3 horsepower motor. When they changed the National Wildlife Reserve to a preserve, we closed a few trails because our 6-hour and 8-hour boat tours were cut to 2-hour tours. It takes a lot of money to keep these boat trails opened up. You can see where the decaying vegetation is going down, filling that trail up. You got to maintain these trails. But the Okeefeenokee Swamp is making land out there. The land is decaying vegetation, trees and bushes coming together to forming peat. Takes many years to form an inch of peat. The peat was mined in the early 1900s in the Okeefeenokee swamp, but there's still a place that the peat is 26 foot deep in the swamp. It wasn't mined. This decaying vegetation makes methane gas. You put a boat paddle or a gator walking across the bottom, it disturbs the methane gas and it'll come up like a scuba diver, bubbling up. The bigger and wider the bubbles, the bigger the gators are. Now, we are famous for our alligators in the Okeefeenokee because they were pushed into the swamp and hunted during the Depression. You see, during the Depression, grown men worked for 50 cents a day from daylight to dark if they could find a job. There was a fad for alligator hides in Europe. The Depression didn't hit Europe as hard as it did America. An 8-foot alligator hide could command 30 cents a foot, and that was real money for people who worked for 50 cents a day from daylight to dark, and they knew how to hunt them. By the time the federal government bought the Okeefeenokee swamp, they said there was less than 5,000 alligators out here. They have been protected. They've come out of the swamp. Now they talk about between 15 to 20,000 out here. They don't know exactly how many they are, because alligators are cannibalistic. The big ones eat the smaller ones, and they start hatching out at the end of August to 1st of September. We do have an alligator nest beside the trail. I'll show you. Well, actually, we have 2 nests. For the past 19 years, these gators have been hunted by permits. Last year, the state of Georgia issued 1,000 permits to hunt alligators. Only the big ones. You get name pulled out of the pot and drawing. You get the chance to pay the privilege of the state of Georgia to $75 for one gator. They want you to get the big ones, not the smaller ones. These big creatures can be hunted at nighttime. You shine their eyes at nighttime and they glow red. The wider the distance between the eyes, the bigger the gator. By a snatch grapple, a bow and arrow with a reel attached to it, or a spear. You cannot fish with them like hooks like the swamp people do, or shoot them with rifles. No rifles are allowed in the boat. Everybody in the boat with you has to have a hunting license. Yeah, that'll get you one way or the other. Dispatching with a pistol or a bang stick. No rifles are allowed. Now this walkway goes out to the tower. Anybody been out to the tower yet? Yep. Okay. It was made in 1953. We'll see it a little bit. You can see the cypress knees or knots coming up underneath the bridge, sticking alongside the trail here. These pond cypress grow very slowly. The cousin, the ball cypress, grows very fast. Pond cypress grows at the rate of about 12 inches every 100 years. This little moonshine whiskey still was busted up in the late 60s. Little 10-gallon pot still, somebody's personal still. They had bigger ones out here in the swamp, believe you. During Prohibition, there was places out here named Whiskey Ridge and Moonshine Lake on the western side of Waycross and on the eastern side. For the activities that went on in the swamp. Well, what better place to hide your illegal activities than one of the largest dark water swamp in the United States. Now, no river feeds the Okeefeenokee swamp. It was formed behind a large giant sand dune. There are 2 rivers that form out of the swamp. The St. Mary's River The southeastern corner flows east to the Atlantic Ocean between English Georgia and Spanish Florida at one time. All behind a giant sand dune. Sand dune's called Trail Ridge, about 130 foot above sea level. But the river everybody knows, the Swanee River, goes out the southwestern corner. It drains the majority of the swamp. In fact, the water from here goes out the Swanee River. And it takes approximately 190 days to go out. No river feeds the swamp. A series of creeks drain about 300,000 acres into the swamp. And they usually go dry after the rainy season. So we're dependent upon rainwater. Then why is the water this color? Well, decaying vegetation, trees and bushes leach out tannins and tannic acid into the water. Look towards the edges. This water's not that dark. It was the color of wheat tea. Now, y'all think about this for a second. What are y'all drinking when you drink tea? The tannins and tannic acid out of tea leaves. Well, the loblolly bay is a member of the tea family, folks. The white bay and the red bay is used for pickling and cooking. They're not even related, all three. They're just the shape of the leaves. Is the water pure? No river feeds the swamp. Would it be surprised if I told you that you can drink this water between 80 to 90% pure? pH does rise when the water drops down. It goes from around 3.7 to 4.5 in the extremity when it's very low. But when it gets that low, they say about 1% is Gatorade in the water then. Moonshiners use the dark tannic acid water to make their whiskey with. It's corn whiskey. During the Depression, they sweetened it with sugar cane syrup and molasses. Connoisseurs of moonshine whiskey say they can taste it. They called it block and tackle. You can drink a half a pint, walk a block, and tackle anything around. It was bad stuff. Now, I'm going to pause right here by this burned tree. I haven't talked much about the swamp here a little bit. This burned tree to the right here is testimony that a fire came through here in 2007. Fire is a great rejuvenator of the swamp. It cleans it out. Why? Because of all this vegetation growing. Now, the swamp is nothing like the swamp of our ancestors. The Seminole Indians would burn it. Being hunters and gatherers, they'd surround some of these islands in the swamp, set fire to them and burn them out and kill what come out the other side, but they only took what they needed. Fire provides dry ground for seeds to germinate. You know, there's over 600 different varieties of plants out here in the swamp. They say about 114, well, 116, and some of them don't count the mushrooms that's out here. And are edible or have some medicinal purposes to them. There are plants, if you know what to look for, to stomachache, diarrhea, constipation, and the witch hazel plant is out here. Fire provides dry grounds for seeds to germinate, gets into the peat, burns the peat back, creates new lakes for the fish to swim in, the birds to lie in, and alligators to play in. It's a very important part of the natural ecosystem of the swamp is fire rejuvenating itself. Hot fires occur when droughts are here from lightning strikes or man-made fires, but fire in the Okeefeenokee swamp goes just as far as the moisture allows it. The fire 2007 swept in here. There was no water in the trail. It was very dry. A tree blew down on a power line April 7th with a 30-mile-an-hour westerly wind and set the woods on fire west of Waycross, the other side of my farm. By the next day, it swept into the swamp. It burned over 600,000 acres in and out of the Okeefeenokee swamp. You can walk in our double glass doors and look to the right, and you can see where the fire burned. Now, we had another fire. Oh, by the way, that fire burned out here for 2 months before it had enough rain to put it out. It gets into the peat and smolders for a long time. The fire of 2011 burned about 300,000 acres. The Bugaboo Island fire of 2017 started with a lightning strike on Bugaboo Island in the swamp. Since the 1980s, the federal government doesn't fight fire. After the Yellowstone fire, they realized fire is very beneficial. This past year, in 2018, we had over 120 inches of rain out here. Average rainfall between 55 to 65 inches, with 75 being a wet year. 2019, we were dry. We didn't have but 51 inches of rain all year long.
Excuse me? What is that?
What do you think it is? It's called a trail cam. It's a camera from the University of Georgia doing the alligator survey. Yeah. Now,
motion.
we do. Yeah, and it's voice recognition too. The fire last year was right outside our gates. A lightning strike hit in the refuge out here and started a fire, and got into the peat, and it burned for about 3 weeks out there. They put it out because it deemed it a threat to the park. Now the Okeefeenokee swamp, gators, they come out here every once in a while and do surveys. This survey from the University of Georgia has actually got alligator. We got GPS collars on gators looking where they go. Some of the gators have been tagged with blood samples, and some of the gators have been actually numbered by they'll take the end of their tail, on the top of their tail, they call it scoots up there. These scoots are it's like kind of like marking a hog's ear, notching a hog's ear for ownership of the hog. These scoots won't grow back. It doesn't hurt the gator or anything. Now, I promised y'all a gator nest over here to the left. That mound of trash is a gator nest. September 10th of 2017, Mama Gator hatched 45 babies out of that nest. In 2015, 40, and 2016, about 18 hatched out of that nest of peat. 2018 come rolling around, the University of Georgia tried to capture this. She's 8.5, pretty close to 9 foot Mama Gator. Well, didn't happen. She went in her cave over here behind us, and they couldn't get her out. There's a cave right behind here. We would come up here and run around. She'd come up here by our nest over here to the left, and she'd huff at you. She'd snap. These creatures are very vocal. In fact, in 2015, this gator come out of her cave and killed about a 3.5, 4 foot gator coming down the trail ahead of the boat right here in the corner here. Old Big Tommy up there to grab the boat. It was in front of his boat. Took him about 45 seconds for her to come up, bite it, grab it, kill it, and pull it out back of her nest. If he wants to run around up there, let him run around. Take that life vest off. He don't want it on him. That's probably what it is. The water ain't that deep. You can stand up about most anywhere.
How deep is it?
That's why we have these wide bottom boats. It don't take much, you know. You'll learn that in math class, in physics. Now, 2019, she surprised us. Over to the right-hand side, she built another nest. Up now, I'm gonna ease back that way again. On the other side of the trail, by the pine tree out there in the woods, she made another nest. Gators will reuse nests if they're successful, but all nests in the Okeefeenokee swamp aren't successful because of the black bears love to eat alligator eggs and their embryos. That mound of trash over there this past year, she hatched 43 babies out of this mound right here back at the pot of pine tree. That's what one generally looks like. It's either an Indian burial mound or a gator nest. There's a whole lot, about 73 mounds, so it's more likely there'll be a gator nest. They dig a hole in the top of it, they re-spruce it, make it one mouthful at a time. Get on top of it and dig a hole and lay between 1 to 60 plus eggs. Big, well, they're kind of white, oblong, and rubbery. They're reptile eggs. Then cover it up with a bunch of peat and let the sun shine back there and incubate their eggs while she protects it for about 65 days. Well, Mama Gator sometimes, she don't like anybody trespassing. But we got a kind of a, well, we had a reckoning with her. And she decided if we wouldn't stay up here by our nest very long, she wouldn't bother us. But don't think Mama Gator is not defenseless. You know they can jump up out of the water, leave the water. Jump up, you know, and leave the water using their tail. Forwards and sideways, but a gator cannot jump back. But that tail is just as bad a weapon as that mouth is. You'll take the tail, break your leg, knock you down towards his mouth. Big alligators have got a 3,000 pound per square inch bite force capacity. What they big bull gators have. In other words, a human leg bone would be crushed if a gator got a hold of it. The alligators, about 65 days, they around there protecting that nest from the bears, but black bears will win if they find the nest. They will actually go up and rip a nest open, gator come out and run them off the nest, and their big powerful claws mess the nest up, and the gator will actually cover the nest back up. About 3 or 4 days, that gator, will be cooled down in the protective state, and the bear, he'll come back around on another circle, investigate, see if she's still protecting the nest or not. Eventually he'll win, eat the eggs. Female gators don't start laying eggs till somewhere around 20 years old. There's no exact time for gators, but big gators have got the best prime area to raise their babies. Sadly, beside the railroad track over there, when y'all go on the train, we got a gator and a gator cave over there by the nest. She actually killed another female gator in 2016 to come try to took over her territory. Now we're talking. The better the territory, the better their chances to raise their babies. So, subordinate females get pushed out to less desirable areas that may dry up around the nest, or a gator might be run off by a black bear. Raccoon can dig in the backside of the nest while they're not looking, eat her eggs. As you look out to the right here, you can see, the swamp opens up away from the trail, comes out there where you can see where the fire came through here. If you look up into the cypress trees, you'll see some of them don't have any small branches in them. To the right, you can see these dead trees have been standing now since 2007. Now, little baby gators are 5, 6, and 7 inches long. They're very tiny, very pretty. All little small baby creatures are pretty and tiny. Mama gator has to protect them from all the predators in the swamp. They try to protect them from the raccoons, the snakes. This gator here back in 2015 went beside the boardwalk there, had 2 little gator wallers there, and somebody was filming with their camera, and a snake grabbed one of her babies and went to squeaking. She went over there and grabbed the snake and shook it and ate it. It's very, these creatures are reptiles, meat eaters. They don't eat vegetables, folks. The little baby gator, its teeth hardens after about 3 days. They got enough leftover egg yolk in their stomach to survive for about 2 weeks. But when that's gone, they have to start learning how to feed themselves. They got minnows, crayfish, bugs, insects, caterpillars, and sometimes each other. These little alligators are very snippy. In the wild, a gator, the more you eat, the more you grow. On gator farms, they can grow about 12 inches a year for the first 5 years of life, and then they slow down. They have to separate them out by size. They're less likely to pick on each other that way. Bite their legs, bite their tails off. In the wild, that happens. They'll bite a sibling's tail off where he can't swim or keep up, hunt for food. That's how they swim, with their tail. They don't use their legs. We got gators out here with half a tails. The big ones they've fought or come up from birth like that. We got a big male gator out here called Chunk. His tail is about 3 foot long. Big old round gator, but he ain't very long. Big and fat too. He gets his food some way or another. But remember, these big gators are cannibalistic. They'll ambush the smaller gators and eat them. Especially during periods of droughts when they get congregated to one area. We got some blueberries, wild blueberries blooming over here on the right. And spring is coming early. This trail goes off through the interior of the swamp. When they redesignated Okeefeenokee as a National Wildlife Preserve, big water and dinner pond areas were deemed pristine. No outboard motors are allowed. The public can come into the swamp with a 10 horsepower motor, 4-stroke now. You can go all the way across, but you can't do that no more. That's where our 6-hour tours got shut down to 2-hour tours. Bam. Also, the government quit sending their trail cutters out here to help keep the peat out of the trail, cut the lilies back. 2018, we actually got to go out the other half of our trail out there and have a 2-hour tour during high water.
Excuse me, when you go in the canoe,
Blasted through the peat coming up to the top. The peat is how we get our name, Okeefeenokee. This peat rises to the top in a big sheet we call a battery. You can actually float, walk on it, like walking on a very spongy mattress. Now the tower's to the left, folks. If you haven't seen that big old 90-foot tower out there, it looks kind of like a fire tower to the left. Gray tower in the horizon. That is still the tallest man-made object in the Okeefeenokee swamp. You walk out the boardwalk, enjoy your scenery out there, climb to the top of the tower, you absolutely see no buildings whatsoever. Beautiful. The sign here is one of the most photographed signs in the entire swamp. On this cypress tree here, you'll see 2 vines growing up it. The first vine, the green leaves coming up, limbs coming out, is called a climbing heath. This vine is a very important vine. It's one of the first vines to actually bloom in the swamp. The vines above it, way up there, is poison ivy vines. We got some bamboo climbing up that one cypress. The climbing heath is eaten by a caterpillar, those leaves. This makes a brown moth. It's called the Okeefeenokee zell. This beautiful little slick black, white, and red caterpillar. And found nowhere else on earth but out here in the Okeefeenokee swamp. And it goes up underneath the bark of the cypress trees to make their cocoon. Now these big cypress trees aren't like the ones that were cut out of the swamp. You may have seen stumps alongside the trail. They come in here with high-wheel timber carts and cut roads in here off of Cowhouse Island. This was not owned by the majority of the big timber companies that came into the swamp. These were leftover cypress trees that cut everything down to 12 inches diameter, breast high. Pulled them out by logging carts, walking through the mud with oxen. These stumps on the right-hand side and the left-hand side here were left over from the logging operations. Heart cypress doesn't rot underwater. It's a very ideal wood. Native Americans used heart cypress for their dugout canoes. Some of the dugout canoes were salvaged around the lakes and the swamp. 30,000 acres of lakes, 80,000 acres of open prairie, grassland, and lily pads around the swamp. They sunk them up in the water to keep them from drying out and the wildfires from burning them. Native Americans, the Seminoles, were driven out of the Okeefeenokee swamp in the Second Seminole War of 1838. After President Andrew Jackson signed a decree to send the Native Americans west of the Mississippi River to the Indian Territory we call Oklahoma, the Cherokees, Choctaws, Crees, Muskogees, Shawnees, numerous other American tribes were rounded up. The Seminoles down here didn't like it. Seminoles were in the Okeefeenokee swamp, southeast Georgia, around the Satilla River up there around Coffee County. War started in Florida and it spread north. Chief Billy Bowlegs led a band of about 150 Seminoles, and he jealously guarded the Okeefeenokee swamp. There were soldiers stationed around the northern rim of the swamp. Blockhouses were made. This was the last area, one of the last areas of land that was put up in a lottery. So, they came out of the swamp, massacred Maximilian Wiles on the western side of the swamp. They considered his cabin an encroachment, burned him out, killed him and wife and the rest of his children, then fled back into the swamp. General Charles Floyd was dispatched to run the Seminoles out of the swamp, but the Seminoles had jealously guarded the Okeefeenokee swamp. If you got caught trespassing in this territory, you didn't make it out alive. They had anything to do with it. That kept this area secret. General Charles Floyd went with his United States Dragoons walking into the interior of the swamp. On the trail of the Seminoles, there's an island in the north southwestern corner called Billis Island. They knew it from the trading activities and went in there. They found none, but they found their trail off into the interior of the swamp, and he led his men into the Okeefeenokee swamp, along with map makers, to map what was going on in the interior of the swamp. After many days of travel, General Floyd found a strange island in the swamp. There he found about 15 big cheeky huts built above the earth. They had planted crops, had animals. Right here is where that bear crossed through. Bear crossed through right through here. Well, he burned their cheekies, destroyed their crops, and ate their farm animals they had toted in there on the island. Continued on the path. The soldiers called it, this is Floyd's Island, named it after the general that let them in here. It is still known as Floyd's Island today, folks. General Floyd went across the Okeefeenokee swamp twice, chasing Native Americans, never did capture any. They pushed them into North Florida. They crossed the St. Mary's River, escaped into North Florida. Thus ended the large Native American contingency in here. A band of Crees, though, during the Civil War, they went over there on the western side of the Okeefeenokee swamp to get away. There is even Deserter Island in the swamp, where people came into the Okeefeenokee swamp that didn't want to fight on the war between the states. The government, state of Georgia, took control of the Okeefeenokee swamp and offered it for sale. Nobody bought it. They homesteaded at some islands in the swamp and left, come back, hunted it extensively, come back out. A group of businessmen, a retired general in Atlanta, Georgia, made a group of businessmen come together and formed the Swanee Canal Corporation. They bought 220,000 acres in the state of Georgia. In the attempt in the early 1900s, late 1890s, to drain the swamp with a big steam drag line. This was the time when the Panama Canal was being dug with these big steam drag lines, and they went and run a canal into the swamp on a barge 12 miles deep, as deep as that barge, that canal, that drag line was deep. This place now is known as the Swanee Canal Recreation Area, operated by the federal government. But when he started digging out across the giant sand ridge that formed the swamp, they realized they couldn't do it. That giant sand dune kept collapsing and the water was going into the swamp instead of out. To save the company and corporation, they come up with another idea. They're going to barge the big timber out, but they never started with the big timber to start with. They're going to drain the swamp, cut the timber to sell the land for pasture or farming. They realized the big timber was 8 more miles into the swamp. So they dug a lesser canal 8 more miles into the timber. They got plans for a steam log skidder in Louisiana. See, the new invention, the steel wire cable, had been invented, and they were going to winch the timber and float them in barges or load it up on the barge and carry it down the canal. The timber was so big and heavy it sank into the mud. Well, it was certainly a poorly run company. The investors withdrew their money, and in 1901, the Swanee Canal Corporation was bought by Charles Herbert out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Him and his son, Henry Herbert, who was in Thomasville, Georgia, to the west of us, bought the swamp. Instead of barging the wood out, they put a different plan. They run a railroad track on the western side into the swamp. They made a band saw mill in Waycross, Georgia, because the timber was so big, there was no wheel saw big enough. Well, when the timber come out, they cut the timber. About 1908 and 1927, Billis Island, they made a mill town, had over 600 people living and supporting logging operations on that island. They cut one large cypress tree out of the swamp that was 26 foot around, like 5 grown men reaching around the tree. There was a wafer cut of a pond cypress in the Swamp Creation Building. And it was cut in the 1960s, and it dates pre-Christopher Columbus discovered America. Now, the railroad was put in the park here in 1999. We got a lot of people that have never seen a dirt dauber or a mud wasp nest coming from up north. They don't have them up there. We got a few spiders in here too. Charles Herbert, being a northern industrialist, companies and corporations would come down south, buy large trucks of land, turpentine it, cut the timber, and give the land back to the state for taxes. He had a different plan. While he was in here cutting, he hired people to come in that 20-mile canal. And he was probably a member of a society still known today as the Audubon Society. They wanted to know where the birds go up from up north when it snowed, where they migrate to. They didn't know. He hired people to document and count birds. 234 different species of birds were counted and documented in the Okeefeenokee swamp. He took that information along with various other societies in Georgia that were interested in a bird observatory, sanctuary, and he sent his agents to work. He evacuated Billis Island, burned all the buildings, pulled up the railroad tracks. He had cut 420 million board feet of wood and over 700,000 railroad cross ties. Sold it. The federal government got control in November of 1936. Charles Herbert sold it to him for $1.50 an acre. He made over $1,400,000 for every year he owned the swamp. Never replanted nothing. That's why the government sent the Civilian Conservation Corps in here to clean the swamp out, open the trails for the public, make platforms. It used to be 140 miles of trails. Now they're down to 120. The canoes and kayaks in the interior of the swamp, you sleep on platforms. And we got plenty of time to go down here. Pioneer Island is accessible from the train tours. The next train tour will be after the animal show at 1 o'clock. When we reach down the park, these canals are dug by backhoes and drag lines and a lot of deeper water. You know, an alligator mates in deep water. He doesn't mate on dry ground. Makes excellent deep water in the swamp. Pioneer Island cabin here was donated to us from the Highsmith family next door in Brantley County. It was disassembled and moved here and reassembled. Gives you an eye on what pioneer life would be. The flower pot on the front porch to the right was actually a water trough or a feed trough hollowed out by a solid hunk of heart longleaf pine tree. One that size is very rare, folks. That will survive the times. Big gators down here, they don't hibernate extensively. They promenade, so to speak. They will come out straight ahead of us. One of the big gators, it could be the big male gator. Alligator has the ability to, being a reptile, to lower his heart rate down to 1 beat per minute, folks. They don't eat. They have to raise their body temperature up at least 70 degrees to digest food. So, big gators have been pulled out of the sewers in New York City. People used to buy these little gators. They get tired of them and flush them down the toilets or let them loose in the sewers in New York City. In Chicago this past year, somebody carried a gator up in Chicago, turned him out in the lake up there. You know what the original range of American alligator was? They said when the Pilgrims landed, there was gators in the swamps of southern New Jersey, all down the eastern seaboard, across the Gulf. I'm going down to Florida, across the Gulf into Texas, and up into Arkansas and Oklahoma, and half the Mississippi waterway. Gator, gator. That's him. That's the alpha male gator we have in the park now. You can see the little notches in their tails. Some of them's got tags. Gator. They don't eat during the wintertime, folks. They have to use their body fat. Gator. Hey, boy. The big gator Oscar, when he died up north, and they found him. Gators are very territorial. They put pheromones in the water, pee and poop in the water, and swish around in their tail. Gator. Hey, boy. They run the subordinate males out of their territory. If they don't, they'll kill them. We had actually a big gator named Mr. Bill, about a 10-footer, that's got gnawed up. Fat around his jaws there, in his tail. Wind's blowing us bad. Laying out there in the sun. They better watch out. Old big boy, when he gets hungry, he may start stalking them. Big toe here, Bigfoot. He came out of the swamp, him and Crazy. Another big gator. Crazy was a little smaller gator. He whipped him and run him off. You know what he started doing then? He started killing a lot of Oscar's offspring, killing the old female gators off. They were so old, they quit producing pheromones and laying eggs. There wasn't any use to him. Old Big Crazy didn't quit his mean, evil ways. We had to put him in a pen. And back in the captive gator pen, that big gator by himself, that 13-foot, 1-inch gator back there in the back is Mr. Crazy. Immediately when he quit producing pheromones and bellowing, patrolling his territory, Big Toe came out of the swamp, took his place. In prime territory, when an alpha gator gets taken out, another one comes and takes his place very soon, folks. These cypress trees to the left, you can see all these knees or knots coming up. These are ball cypress. They're a lot leafier tree than the old pond cypress. We got them planted around the park here. To the right is the Wiles Museum, dedicated by the Wiles family. The last Indian massacre in Georgia, that's a replica of his cabin. You can go in there and mash the buttons and tell you about the last Indian massacre in Georgia. Next is a little museum, old pictures and movie memorabilia and old stuff in there. All that is accessible across the bridge from Pioneer Island on the train tour. Pioneer Island is kind of a depicted way of life for settlers. And the government condemned land. There are people living around the edge of the swamp less than a half a mile from here, down on Cowhouse Island, right in the edge of the swamp. Well, they told the family they could live there the rest of their life, but they couldn't expand their cabin just in case somebody extra, you know, the extra children and all, they'd expand the cabin out. And you couldn't kill the black bears or the panther that came out, killed your livestock. So why live there? They moved, picked up and moved. On the stilts out there is the cane mill, what people use to grind the sugar cane, make the syrup. That's a lot higher than a regular working mill would be. You have to duck down every time a sweep come around, and you fed the mill, get the sugar cane juice. You carried it to a boiler. There's a little boiler in the building there. You boil the juice down, make syrup out of it. That's a lost art. You boil it too fast, it boils it out on the ground, waste it. You got to clean it, get the impurities out of it. That is stalks of sugar cane over there in the old mule lot, kind of what sugar cane looks like. It can grow from the eyes on the joints of the plant, or from previously planted to come up from the roots, sugar cane. Very important commodity, sugar cane was. It grew up very well down here. People used to make their barrels, go to the cooper to get the rings, sell the syrup. But like I said, during the Depression, only the people were buying it after a certain while were the moonshiners. Grandpa said he didn't care who bought his syrup, as long as they paid him a long green and do with it what they wanted to. Daddy said Grandpa planted 30 acres of cane one time, about worked him to death. A lot of work in sugar cane, folks. Lots of work. Now the lilies we're passing by right here on the right, sticking out above the water, they're called bonnet lilies. They'll actually have a yellow flower on that stalk sticking up. In the springtime, well, we ain't had any even cold enough weather to kill the lilies. You know, they freeze or frost and kill the lilies. They fall down in the water. There's a root down there that puts them up. In the springtime, the tender stalks, it's a 3-chambered green stalk that actually carries air to the root down there. These stalks are edible. They chopped up, boiled, and they're called gator taters. Right here on the left, the lilies laying flat on the water, they're the white pond lilies. The pond lily flower is a bulb, the white bulb. Well, actually, when it ripens, it'll open in the morning and close at nighttime. The bulb of the pond lily is edible. Kind of tastes kind of like a turnip. That's where the bonnet lily's roots tastes kind of like a potato. They're starchy, very woody though. This floating grass clumps right here, used for gators. Gators would take and kill animals. The smaller ones would drag raccoons in the water. If they can't break them apart, they'll stick them up underneath that grass and let them rot. Every once in a while you'll come by out here and you'll smell something dead through here, and that's what it'll be. Where they come up and caught. These creatures don't care. They swallow their food whole and they prefer it rotten. Big gators do hunt on dry ground, and they can run it at speeds of 30 miles per hour for a short distance. Well, here we go. Let's see here, about 12 o'clock, animal show coming up. On the bank here to the right, this green bush in the water is called the golden club. The flowers this time of year are edible. Tastes kind of like asparagus, the golden club. They get the children out there blowing a horn. Next thing on the park's the snake over here on the left, over on top of the pipe. Coming out. The banded water snake laying up there.